Welcome back to another edition of the Osceola Seminole Sidelines Florida State 2024 Spring Football Preview. Today, we're talking about the offensive line, and who better to be joined by when talking about offensive line play than the Osceola's Mark Salva, who played offensive line for Coach Bobby Bowden back in the 80s, and then was a graduate assistant coach for Florida State in the 90s, and then coached at South Carolina for 5 years as offensive line coach. Mark, first of all, welcome back. We haven't seen you since about December 3rd, man. What's going on?
I come out of my cave.
Yeah.
Come out of mourning. Had to take care of my anger issues. I live around a lot of Alabama people, so I have to, just kind of stay scarce, and that's how it is.
Yeah.
But I'm over it.
Well, listen, that's a great thing. That's a great thing about spring football. We can focus on 2024 now. It's the official start of the 2024 football team season year with the start of spring practice, which will happen on March 19th after the school comes back from spring break. Florida State goes on spring break this week and will be back on this 19th for the start of spring practice. That's the first year Mike Norvell has not started spring practice going into spring break. So that a little bit different calendar for the Seminoles. But yeah, listen, I think we talked about it on the first preview as the quarterbacks. I think everyone's ready to move on. And listen, there's a lot to talk about. Florida State on the offensive line, I think it's going to be intriguing. You lost 3 full-time starters or co-starters in Bless Harris, Casey Roddick, and Dimitri Emmanuel, either to transfer portal, Harris, or graduation, Roddick and Emmanuel. You also lost Anaya Charlton, Daughtry Richardson, Quayshawn Sapp, and Thomas Schrader to the portal. We wish those guys well. Obviously, what that did was allow Florida State to go out and attack the portal even further on the offensive line. We saw them bring in TJ Ferguson from Alabama and Richie Leonard from Florida. We'll get into all that, but let's talk about who is coming back, Mark. And listen, they have 5 players returning with starting experience. Robert Scott, all redshirt seniors. Robert Scott, who's played a lot at tackle, did not play a lot last year, only about 191 snaps, but was listed as a starter or co-starter on every depth chart. As we know, the season depth charts really don't mean anything. But obviously, he's a guy that, if healthy, would be a projected starter. And then, of course, you've got Keandre Jones coming back for his last year at Florida State. Maurice Smith at center. Darius Washington, who has played guard, center, tackle, and started games at all 3 positions. And then you got Jeremiah Byers back. Mark, just talk about the importance of having, because you don't have a lot of proven backup, proven talent coming into this spring, maybe outside of Richie Leonard. And we'll get into snap counts as we continue to go into this thing from last season for all these guys. But just talk about, with the relative inexperience depth-wise at Florida State, how big an advantage it is for Florida State to have 5 redshirt seniors with starting experience coming back.
Yeah, this is a real interesting spring, because you have these 5 redshirt senior players coming into the spring with very, like you said, very little depth back there. And typically in the spring, those guys don't get a lot of reps. Right? Those, what they can do. Spring is for developing players, and it's for seeing what your younger guys can do. But, you look behind them, and there's a lot of unknowns, especially with the younger guys. But you need to be able to have spring practice. You need to be able to run team drills. You need to be able to give reps to your defense. You need to be able to compete against your defense. So it's going to be interesting to see how they manage the snaps going into spring with all of these older guys, and mix in the younger guys. Now, I will say that, the way it looks, I would think that you got 4 guys on the back end that should be ready to play coming out of the spring for sure, right? When you look at Armella, Early, Ferguson, Leonard, if you project them as second team guys to those other guys, and there's a debate to be had there, obviously.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about, when you look at those 5 guys that are returning with experience or returning starters. Do you see anybody that you consider to be a lock for one of the starting 5 positions? And we know that Darius Washington can play anywhere on the offensive line. He's proven that game in and game out, season after season. But listen, Jeremiah Byers led the team in snaps last year, 109 snaps, played a lot of football for Florida State. I'm not sure maybe our expectations were too high for Jeremiah coming in as an all-conference player. We certainly saw what we saw in him last spring and last fall going into the season. Then, listen, I think you and I talked about it. Probably not as great a season as we anticipated him having. But do you see anybody? Listen, Keandre Jones obviously is a force in the run game. Struggled a little bit out in the perimeter game on screens, not getting out on the safeties or corners or linebackers quick enough. Robert Scott was hurt most of the season. Did not play a lot, as I said, 191 snaps. Maurice was banged up most of the year, but seems when he's healthy plays. And you got Darius Washington, who's the glue for that entire offensive line.
Yeah.
But do you see a group that maybe is fighting for their jobs and maybe a group that's penciled in as long as they're healthy?
So let's talk about these 5 guys. I love Maurice Smith. I know a lot of people aren't great fans of him for whatever reason. I don't know why. I think he's long, he's athletic. I know he doesn't weigh a ton, and he's not the most physical guy, but he reminds me a lot of Michael Tanks. He's long. He has strong hands. He's got great feet, and he gets in great positions. And Michael Tanks was the Outland Trophy runner-up. And Maurice reminds me a lot of him. So I love him. Darius Washington, obviously, play any position up front has. I think he started a game at every position, right?
Yes, he has. I know he's played every position.
I know he's played everyone. I think he started a game at every one, right? So his versatility is absolutely his skill set and his versatility is so diverse and such a value to this offensive line. So I love those 2 guys. I think with Byers, you're right. I think our expectations going in and we're way too high for him to be able to compete. He has some work to do, and he still probably does. And Keandre Jones has a real specific skill set, right? Robert Scott has it all if he's healthy, and so how much do you want to use him in the spring? Now, those 5 guys, I think, are legitimately there's some guys behind them that I think are legitimate prospects to earn significant playing time, if not starting positions, right? I think it's time for Jalen Early to see what he can do. I think this is a big spring for Jalen Early to get into the mix, right? Yep. I think this is a big spring for Julian Armella to show what he can do and get in the mix. Can he be a disciplined player? Can he get out of this blind dog in the meat house mentality that he has, trying to kill everybody and be a smoother player, more technique, more refined player. I think those 2 guys in particular, this is a big spring for them, right? Yeah. And look, I'd even argue that you would take Byers, put him at right guard, and put Washington over at right tackle. Okay.
And why do you think that, Mark? I've heard that from several people that I respect. Obviously, I respect you a lot as a football mind, but I've heard that from multiple people now. Why do you think that's the right fit for Byers and Washington?
Well, look, in today's college football, you want big physical guards. If you look, and Keandre Jones definitely fits that, but Byers is a physical guy. I don't think he has the requisite change of direction and balance to get up to block the elite pass rushers that we're going to face. If the elite ones, the Patrick Paytons of the world, right? Yeah. On the edge. Not that he can't do it. I think doing it on a consistent basis, I'm not so sure. I think inside much more suits his skill set. He's a physical mauler, aggressive off the football. You want to run, inside zone. You want to run the duo play. You want to pull and kick out or log an end. I think he's your guy. Now Darius, we know, is athletic, just for what we said about him, and he's played that position, and he's done fairly well. He obviously can get better. They all can get better, but I think he was a lot more consistent than Byers was out at tackle. But you know what? It also frees you up to get early in there and get him some rest, because during the course of the year, even maybe during the course of the spring, you're going to have to take Darius, and he's going to have to play some other position somewhere down. Yeah. Right? So let's get early ready. at that position. That's to me. But and I think Byers could be your guy at right guard for 800 snaps.
Yeah. And the way I looked at the returning guys, I've kind of tried to play this out in my mind how it could go through spring, and obviously anything can and probably will happen. But I think Maurice Smith is going to. He seems to be the leader of that group. I think he will find a way to hang on to that center position. People have been trying to unseat him now for 3 seasons. Doesn't seem to work. Listen, I don't see how if Darius Washington is healthy, I don't see how he's not in the starting lineup somewhere.
Right.
Regardless of where it is.
And I think you need to preserve Maurice and Robert Scott. You know, they don't need a lot of reps this spring. They don't,
Well, the only thing I'd say about Robert, I think Robert may, if my evaluation is right on Jalen Early and Andre Otto, I think both tackles are going to have their hands full of trying to hang on to their starting position. I think, listen, you watch Andre Otto and go through drills this past fall in practice, and he's very impressive. And then, of course, I like Jalen Early. I like him as a guard or a tackle. And I agree with you. This is a huge spring for Julian Armella because I think he's got to. I think he's got to solidify Julian. He's got to solidify his spot in the 2 deep, and that's a guy, Mark. I want to ask you this: you talk about blind dog in a meat house. The knock on him at tackle when you watch him is he's got a tendency to lunge and pass protection at times. Do you negate some of those tendencies if you move him inside to guard? I know a lot of people feel like that would be his more natural position. Could that be a place where Armella maybe is a little bit more productive than at tackle, particularly if you get a Jalen Early and Andre Otto and a Lucas Simmons, who is the physical prototype of what you want as a tackle. If he comes along as a redshirt freshman, is Armella a guy you could see playing guard?
I mean, yeah, I think he could. Just the eyeball, he looks like a tackle. I think just because of his length.
Yeah, he's 6'6".
Yeah, he's every bit 6'6", but there are guards that are 6'6". I mean, yeah, he could. Short answer to your question, obviously. I just think his potential out at tackle, his ceiling at tackle is pretty high. In terms of his skill set. Now, can he refine his technique? Can he have the right mentality? Can he play with his head as much as he does with his heart? Is what it looks like to me from a distance. I can see the want to. I can see he wants to go out there and maul people and wants to be physical and you want all of that. Now, how do you take that and make that into a refined football player? And that's the challenge that Alex Atkins has this spring, is to get him playing that way.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I think it's he's going into his 3rd year on campus. I believe he's a redshirt junior, if I've got that right. Redshirt sophomore. 3rd year on campus. Yeah, I think it's time for him to make a move. I think and he's a guy that you want to see succeed. He seems like a great kid. Very personable kid. He's a guy that's easy to pull for, shows a lot of enthusiasm even when he's not playing. If you're one of those guys that pays attention to what's going on during the game on the sideline, he's always involved. Obviously a legacy. And it's amazing how many legacies are on this football team with this last class signing. You had a Fryer. But yeah, so I think it's a big thing, big deal for him. I think another guy who's got to have a big spring is Bryson Estes, a guy that we have thought would play a little bit more than he has. He played 51 snaps last season. If you're paying attention, Armella had 49, Early 56, and Chris Otto played 1 game as a true freshman, 5 snaps. But I think this is a big, and I think that Estes is a guy that could end up at center. As you said, we've got him on our depth chart listed as the backup center. We also think that when they bring in Jacob Rizzi, the Harvard guy, the Harvard transfer in the summer, he's probably going to move. He plays tackle for Harvard, played tackle for Harvard. I think he's a guy that's going to move inside at Florida State. So could he play with the ball in his hand? We'll find out. But I think, listen, this is Estes' 4th year on campus. I think he's got to figure out a way in the 2 deep, or, we got the portal's open again. Does he go looking for a place that he can play? And the portal thing is going to be crazy. And then, of course, you're bringing in Richie Leonard from Florida, who led the Gators in snaps from scrimmage last year, and you're bringing in T.J. Ferguson, who was a 4-star prospect out of Peach County, Georgia, from Alabama. He played about 120 snaps at Alabama last year. How do you see those two guys fitting into this room?
Well, I think Richie Leonard probably ends up starting. He's got a specific skill set. Keandre Jones has a specific skill set. I think they don't necessarily complement each other, but I think Richie's experience and productivity. Now, the film. I watched the FSU game with Richie and a little bit of LSU game, and you know what? He gets himself in some pretty good positions. I think where he gets himself in trouble is honestly, it's a little bit on effort and it's a little bit on finish. I think those are things that are correctable for sure, right? And so but he did account of himself pretty well. I mean, you don't play 700 snaps in that league,
no,
and not come away with something, right? Definitely. So I can see him starting over Keandre possibly. Keandre, like you said, if we're going to be doing a lot of pulling and screenplay, it's not his strength. Keandre's strength is if we're going to run inside zone, and I think you saw that at times when we went to more inside zone stuff. Keandre got more snaps in the game. Yep. So I think that's what you would see with him. So you've got two guys there, and I think Richie gives you the more diversified skill set. And I see him starting. Ferguson, I think, is a work in progress. He's a developmental player right now still. I mean, he's got a high ceiling, a relatively high ceiling. His experience is not quite what Richie's is, obviously, and quite frankly, what the other guys that we have in front of him are right now. So it's a big spring for him. I mean, if he can elevate his game and actually outperform some of these guys up front, then maybe he gets significant playing time, if not wins the starting position. I don't want to put that totally out of the realm of possibility.
Right.
So that's how I see those two guys.
Yeah, and of course you got Jaden Todd coming in enrolled early for spring. Ty Hilton too. Obviously, I don't know Jaden when he showed up towards the end of the last year after his season was over. He was in a shoulder harness. I don't even know if he'll be able to go through spring. I have no idea, or if he will be limited. Obviously, those shoulder injuries take a while to repair, and I don't know the extent of his. But he was wearing a brace on his arm. On his one of his last visits during, I believe, the last home game of the year, maybe North Alabama. And then, of course, you got Ty Hilton, obviously true freshman. You just want them to get acclimated to the speed and strength of the game, and, not get discouraged, frustrated. Just kind of learn the system, learn what it is to be a college football player. Now, I do, Mark. We get a lot. We're seeing a lot more guys enroll early out of high school. I think for some guys that's probably a good thing. For others, I'm not sure. I think some of it may be position specific. How do you feel about a freshman offensive lineman enrolling early? Do you think that's a benefit to them because they're getting in the college weight room and they're supervised, or do you think that could be a detriment because they're getting beat up on more than likely in spring football practice?
Yeah, I think if you're smart as a coach, there's no downside. I think you protect them, going into when you go into the drills and full contact drills, that you make sure they go against like versus like, because I'm sure there's some freshmen or walk-on defensive linemen that they can have experience some success on that are working on the same kind of level that they're working on at the time. I think it's very rare you bring in a true freshman guy that can compete right away. There's not a lot of Jamie Dukeses out there anymore, that walk in and are able to compete right away. So
Pat Tomlin's,
right? I mean, yours truly. No, just kidding. But look,
did you play as a true freshman?
Yeah, I played a lot as a true freshman.
Did you really?
I didn't start a game, but I don't know.
Were you in shock the first time you went up against another college football player?
It was live drills. Yeah, it was different. I mean, it's not a fair comparison really, because when I came out of high school, our weight program was so much more advanced. I was so much more ready than another freshman coming in, like a Joe Inott and all that. They didn't have the weight room that I had. I had a weight room run by Guadalcanal Marine, and so I was physically more prepared. So it's not to say these days everybody has the same access to training that I had coming out in the 80s. But all that being said, It's a great advantage to get acclimated, to get, like you said, under the supervision of Coach Storms and his staff. That development clock starts that much earlier, and and your biggest gains are early, right? That first 6 months is when you're going to find your biggest gains physically and developmentally, and to get that out of the way and not have to acclimate during the course of the season, and then have the whole, have the spring, then have the whole summer to kind of work on it and kind of get it, and then go into this. It's a huge advantage. The thing you have to do is you have to protect them during contact drills. Yep. Like you said, you don't want them to get discouraged. You don't want them to get overwhelmed, and just protect them. So,
all right. Well, listen. Let me ask you this question on the offensive line. Do you think this room going into spring 2024 is stronger than the room going into spring 2023? Do you think they have a better chance at finding 8 guys that are starting quality out of this group compared to last year's group?
I think obviously, because all the guys that are back are 1 year better.
Yeah.
That by default makes them better in that regard. I think Ferguson and Leonard are, I love Dimitri Emmanuel. I think Dimitri Emmanuel did a great job for this program. I won't say they're necessarily an upgrade, but I will say the loss will be, not be as felt as drastically as if we got nobody, right?
Yep.
As if you're putting a freshman in there. I think, with Leonard and Ferguson, replacing Meach and Casey Roddick. I think, Casey Roddick, he did well for us, at times, but at times he was limited, so I think we're probably upgraded there, if I'm being totally honest,
Yeah, I think athletically for sure with Leonard and Ferguson, I think they are more athletic probably than Keandre Jones and Roddick were. Listen, I love spring because you do really get to see some battles play out. And I listen, there's going to be battles at every position, probably outside of quarterback. And while we got you, I'm going to ask you about that before we leave. But listen, I think that I think you're going to see 2 young guys in particular push some of these returning starters. And I believe that you'll see Jalen Early make a big push. Still early in Andre Chris Otto's career. He's only going to be a redshirt freshman next fall, but he's a kid that looks to be a natural-born football player. It is hard to believe watching him. And of course, I know he was down in Key West. It's hard to believe that he did not have more big-time college football offers. I'm looking for him to make a big move. I think he will assert himself in the 2 deep, as I do Jalen Early. And then, of course, I agree with you. Richie Leonard is probably going to compete not for a spot on the 2 deep, but a starting role. And then, again, we'll see, as you said, TJ Ferguson, more of a still in the process of developing into a college football player, but obviously this will be his 3rd year playing football. Well, actually 4th year as a redshirt junior. So it's it's going to be interesting to see how he is. That a Alabama had too much talent thing, or he didn't respond to maybe Alex Atkins pushes the magic button on him, gets him to live up to his potential. So I think it's going to be a fascinating spring at most positions.
Well, he played behind a pretty damn good football player, right?
Yeah. So there's no shame. I told somebody there's no shame in being second team at Alabama. You can probably start anywhere else in the country.
Right.
Most guys on their roster. So it is going to be interesting. But all right. So we've talked a little bit about the offensive line, and since we got you, we have not had you here since the end of the last season. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about just the offense in general. They brought in DJU from Oregon State. You saw Tate transfer out. You saw AJ Duffy transfer out. You're bringing in Luke Kromenhoek. What did you think of? And did you think that they did the right thing by bringing DJ in, which probably cost you Tate for sure? AJ was already gone. Did you think they made the right move there? And what do you like about that move? And what does he bring to this offense based on what you've seen from him?
So this is the reality of college football today, right? Your roster changes year to year.
Right.
And so, the opportunity truly is always now. It's not, hey, let's get, we got these guys coming through. Maybe we go 9-3 next year. The opportunity is now.
It's more of the pro model. I mean, it's turned into a pro model.
It really is. The way the rosters get changed around, and because of the momentum that we have from last year, the reputation Mike has from bringing in guys and developing them. I mean, the combine last week was a perfect illustration of the opportunity that's here at Florida State, right, with our strength staff and Coach Norvell.
Yep.
So all that being said, the opportunity is now. Did Tate afford you the leadership and what's required of that position? Did he afford you that opportunity moving forward? I think, you know what, he was a stop back. I think the first half of the Florida game, including all the circumstances surrounding it, I get it was a tough ask. It was a tough ask for anybody. It would have been a tough ask for Jordan Travis. It would have been a tough ask for, Caleb Williams. I mean, whoever, right? It was a tough ask in that atmosphere at night, so much on the line for both teams. It was a tough ask. I just think the response was a little eye-opening maybe for Mike. I don't know if that was just that one, because that was his chance to really just take the bull by the horns. And he made some great plays, but early on it was tough, and it wasn't all his doing. It was, run throughs from the offensive line. It was a whole team thing. But all that being said, I think, bringing in a fifth-year senior guy with the experience that he has and who's been through the ringer, who's been through those tough times already, right? Understands the stakes in the game, has the talent, right?
Yeah.
We can all argue about, I know the things that I kind of look at when I look back at his time at Clemson was his ability to process information. I don't know how much of that was coaching, system, whatever. I hadn't watched a whole lot of his Oregon State stuff. I just hadn't had a chance. Has that gotten better? Was that a system or was that him?
Right.
I think we'll find out really quick. I think Mike also has a great way of fine-tuning his offense to the skill set of the players that he has. He did it with Jordan. He did it with whatever running backs or receivers that we have. I think it's obvious that we didn't have a lot of burners, right?
Yes.
Right. And so taking the top off the defense wasn't an option for us. And that, of course, constricts the field, and those spaces are tight. And then you get a quarterback who's not the most accurate quarterback. So we were kind of limited in our offense. When you look back at it, you think, okay, Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson, they're not going to totally take the top off every time because they're not scared of their speed. And what that does, that makes those inside zones really tight. And now you got a quarterback who's not the most accurate passer. He got better and better and better and better, but that wasn't his strength, right?
Yep.
Well, moving forward, what's this team going to look like? Well, we got some guys maybe that are maybe a little faster now. We saw how Hakeem Williams can run. We know Dustin Hill can run, Ja'Kai Douglas can run, so we can maybe take top. So does that open it up a little more? And then you got DJ, who runs a different running game, right? He's a
power guy.
He's a power guy. That is a whole different deal. You might not get the wow plays that you got with Jordan, but you're going to get maybe matriculating the ball down the field with DJ. So was it the right call to bring him in? I think it was an opportunity that you had to take. And I think Brock Glenn is going to be a fantastic quarterback for this team. I think Luke Kromenhoek's going to be a fantastic quarterback for this team. But the reality is, will both those guys be here the full duration? I would hope so. I hope they both stay all 5 years, but the reality is that one of them is probably not going to be here. Because you got Trevor Jones coming in next year, right?
Yeah. And you got a lot of people think they're going to recruit another quarterback for the 2025 class.
You can recruit one every year.
Whether it's high school or portal guy. All right, so I do want to ask you one final question. We'll wrap it up. We can talk all day. All right, so you bring in a bridge quarterback because you don't think Brock is quite ready to take over the team, and you got a true freshman that'll be your third team quarterback more than likely, and Luke. All right, so this bridge thing, because you don't think he's ready, but, listen, he's still going to have to go through some – I think it's very important that they play Brock in meaningful situations this year in order to get him ready for 2025 because, the way they practice today, you can't really get a quarterback ready in practice. They do one live scrimmage. And, listen, they can call it – we can call – and maybe some teams in college football do, but they don't play tackle football in practice. And that's – you're only going to learn full speed. So, I told Bob and Kurt when we did the quarterback preview – I think it's important that they get him involved in games where Florida State's up 14 or 21 and not 35 and 42, or give him a series every now and then early in a game when the pressure's on. Because if you don't do that, Mark, you're going to have to go through those growing pains in 2025.
I think that's very wise. I mean, because you know for a fact DJ's not going to be there next year,
right?
And you can't count on getting a DJ or George, somebody ready to come in. So, you got to work with what you have. So yeah, get him in early. Get him in the third. Say you're going to get the third series, and we'll go from there. We'll put it, regardless of what the circumstances are. I mean, even if we're down, even if we're struggling, even whatever, get him in there. I think, it's because it's better early. It's not going to, because if it doesn't happen late, it's not going to happen at all. So
right.
You got to do it early, right?
Yeah. I just wondered what you thought about that. I've been thinking. I probably spent too much time thinking about it. I did not know if I was a fan of bringing him in because I thought maybe you lose Brock and that would have put you in a really bad situation. But I'm sure that they had that conversation with Brock beforehand and what Mike's plan was. Mike seems to be a really upfront guy when it comes to that, based on everything I know about the program. All right, Mark. Well, we've covered the offensive line. We've covered a little bit of quarterbacks with you. We're happy to have you back. Now, what everybody wants to know is, are you going to go to our sponsors' website, Aer Lingus and Anthony Travel, and join your fellow Seminoles in Dublin, Ireland on August 24th for the season opener against Florida State and between Florida State and Georgia Tech?
I will say there is the arrow's up on that.
Okay. All right. Well, Mark, you can go to Seminoles2Ireland.com. Seminoles, the number 2, Ireland.com, and check out ticket packages for the trip to Dublin, Ireland. So, and you'll be out there with Kurt and Jerry, and there's an off chance I'm going, but small. I'm not sure if I'm outside the United States, particularly to Ireland.
Has your application to the Homeland Security gone through yet? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't know if it has or not. But anyway, so Mark, we hope that are you coming down for any spring ball? We talked about that.
I'm still working on that. Yeah, okay. Still working on that.
All right. Well, we hope to have Mark back on. We gave him 3 months off. He should be well rested. He should be ready to go. So we hope to have Mark with us this spring. But we want to thank you for joining us for this edition of our 2024 spring football preview. If you're not an Osceola subscriber, please go to theosceola.com or floridastate.rivals.com. We've got a lot of free content, a lot of content behind the paywall, a ton of recruiting information, baseball stories from baseball games. Obviously, all our entire written preview for offense has gone out this week. So please go to theosceola.com and check us out. If you're not a subscriber to our YouTube page and you're watching us, please click the subscribe button and the alert button so you know when we have these previews and other podcasts type things going on. And I think Monday we are expecting to have 4-star wide receiver Kobe Howard, who just has announced that Florida State is in his final 8, and he will be committing somewhere on March 31st, and that just happens to coincide with a visit to Florida State on March 28th. So we'll have Kobe is currently scheduled to join us on Monday. We'll probably put that video out on Tuesday, but please join us here at the the Osceola YouTube channel or at theosceola.com to check out our podcast. But Mark, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Go Noles.
Your Seminoles kick off the 2024 football season in Dublin, Ireland, as they face the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets in the Aer Lingus College Football Classic. Join fellow Florida State fans on a trip you won't soon forget. Game tickets for the August 24th matchup are now available through Florida State Athletics Ticket Office and selling fast. Visit Seminoles2Ireland.com. That's Seminoles, the number 2, Ireland.com. And go Noles!